Sticking with the U.S. press, let us go with Axios' Zach Basu, right in the far right.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Given the position you've now staked out, what leverage exactly is Ukraine being left with, especially if the U.S. also plans to wind down its military aid? And then quickly, if a NATO ally is attacked by Russia or any country, will the U.S. unequivocally uphold its obligations under Article 5, regardless of that country's
Well, we've
defense
said
spending?
we're committed to the alliance, and that's part of the alliance, right? You point out Article 5, you point out Article 3. It's just a cheap, I'm not saying it's cheap coming from you, but it's just a cheap political point to say, oh, we've left all the negotiating cards off the table by recognizing some realities that exist on the ground. President Zelensky understands the realities on the ground, President Putin understands the realities on the ground, and President Trump, as a deal maker, as a negotiator, understands those dynamics as well. By no means is anything that I state here, even though we lead the most powerful military in the world, hemming in the commander-in-chief in his negotiations to ultimately decide where it goes or does not go. Well, he's got all the cards he would like. And the interesting part is, oftentimes, while the conventional status quo mindset or the legacy media wants to play checkers, the same checkers game we've been playing for decades, President Trump, time and time again, finds a way to play chess. As a deal maker, as a businessman who understands how to create realities and opportunities where they otherwise may not exist. Take, for example, the conversations that our Treasury Secretary had in Kiev recently with President Zelensky, which will continue in Munich with our Vice President and Secretary of State, around investments and resources inside Ukraine. I don't want to get ahead of any decision or announcement that could be made there. It could be any number of parameters. But President Trump, as a deal maker and a businessman, recognizes that an investment relationship with Ukraine, ultimately in the long term for the United States, is a lot more tangible than any promises or shared values we might have, even though we have them. There is something to relationships and deals in real ways, whether militarily or economically or diplomatically, that he sees that are possibilities that could forge together a lot of opportunities to show that solidarity that Vladimir Putin will clearly recognize. That's one of any number of other opportunities that this president will leverage in these high-stakes negotiations. So I just reject on its face the premise that somehow President Trump isn't dealing with a full set of cards when he's the one that can determine ultimately what cards he holds.
Great. Now shifting to the